ॐ अज्ञानतिमिरान्धस्य ज्ञानाञ्जनशलाकाय चक्षुरुन्मिलितमेन तस्मै श्रीगुरवे नमः। नमो नमो अनिरुद्धाय ऋषिकेशेन्द्रियात्मने नमः परमहंसाय पूर्णाय निवृतात्मने स्वर्गापवर्गद्वाराय नित्यं शुचिसदे नमः। नमः हिरण्यवीर्याय चातुर्होत्राय तान्तवे। हरे कृष्णा 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 हरे हरे, हरे राम 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 हरे हरे. Hare Krishna. So today it's Thursday, the 25th of May, and we're continuing a discussion on Sri Harinam Cintamani. This is, in fact, we have today and Thursday, which is 2 more days of discussion on Sri Harinam Cintamani, after which we'll be beginning a new topic starting next week. So, going back to today's chapter, we concluded the 10 offenses Namaparad in the previous discussion. And today we would be talking about Seva Aparadha. So Sri Harinam Cintamani is distributed into first describing the glories of the holy name, describing the stages of chanting, such as offensive chanting, offenseless chanting, but yet it's not pure, which is Namabhas. And then finally, Sri Harinam Cintamani talks about pure chanting of the holy names, where Shraddha is full, or faith is full. Now, after discussion of the different stages of chanting of the holy names, we are also touching upon the 10 Namaparadhs, or the offenses that are committed by devotees or practitioners of the Yuga Dharma when they're calling upon the holy names. And this entire dialogue is being prompted by Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. He is empowering Srila Haridas Thakur and then receiving a response, and that response is being recorded, commented upon by our acharyas. In this case, it is Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur, and then we are sharing that. Now, finally, after sharing Namaparad, we are getting into the stage of Seva Aparad, which is quite critical. Seva Aparad practically revolves around Seva associated with the deity form of Krishna. Every one of us have been exposed in some way, manner, or form, in some cases intensely, in some cases we have begun to appreciate the presence of deities. And Seva Aparad is all about offenses committed while engaging in the service to the deity form of the Supreme Lord, the divine couple. And Seva Aparad basically is classified into 32 different aparads. In some cases, they have also categorized 50 aparads, which fall into Seva Aparad. But what is more important is for us to understand the essence of Seva Aparad. Why is it that there is this particular situation where we engage in service? We are being given this opportunity to come closer to the Archa Vigraha of Krishna. The Archa Vigraha of Krishna is non-different from Krishna. It is completely non-different. It is his extraordinary mercy that he manifests himself as the deity. And it does not matter if the deity is installed where the Pranapatista Stapana has been done, or whether the deity is not installed. It doesn't really matter. Depending on the varying degrees of affection, of preeti, of intense connection, the deity can manifest himself or herself fully and be able to engage us in this service. So it is not so much that we're going to classify deities as saying that, okay, if they're not installed, we can, kind of keep them out. We can discard them. We can use them in any manner. Or if they're installed, then we got to be careful. The fact is that it is the Rupa Archa Vigraha of Krishna. It is the object of our love. So the treatment meted out to the object of our love in his Archa Rupa or Archa Vigraha form will reflect completely on our ability to move forward. Amongst the different limbs of devotional service, deity worship plays an extraordinarily important role. In other words, it's a very, very, very powerful medium to upgrade our devotional service. If one takes deity worship very seriously, then one is able to fully appreciate the process of devotion, and they're able to make and rapidly accelerate. The opposite is also true if there are offenses committed to the deities. Srila Prabhupada used to make a remark, and it is a well-known remark amongst his disciples. He used to say that there are two very, very dangerous occupations in the entire planet. The first occupation, which is most dangerous, is to be my servant, and the second most, or equal, on an equal level, the very dangerous occupation is to be a servant of Sri Sri Radha Madhava. Okay, this was Prabhupada's statement. He used to be very, very clear that serving an elevated Vaishnava can provide opportunity, it can provide great impetus, it can provide a lot of acceleration in our seva. On the other hand, committing aparadha while being in such proximity of such great power could electrocute or end our devotional process quite abruptly. Both sides are equally true. One is that when there's great power, it has the ability to assist us and take us to the next level. It also has the ability to bring us down quite rapidly. Okay, Srila Prabhupada was very categorical that both services of serving him as a personal servant or serving the deity can result in serious problems if the person is not surrendered, or if the person has not understood what they're in for, or if the person views that in relationship to the body, which is practically viewing the seva as being material. Because the Archa Vigraha is non-different, and an elevated soul is also completely non-different in terms of being able to serve an elevated Vaishnava who has descended from the spiritual sky, especially someone of the potency of Srila Prabhupada. So he was not joking when he was saying that these are very dangerous jobs, because Krishna was using him for very special service. If Krishna is going to be using him for such special service, there's great potency, and with such great potency, there's also great opportunity, and along with opportunity, there's also a hazard. Okay, it's as much as you have a very powerful weapon, it can cause a lot of destruction. It can also offer a lot of protection. Just to take a simpler example, that's all. Now, let us understand the mood in which Srila Haridas Thakur started this dialogue. I'm going to read from Sri Harinam Cintamani. Lord Chaitanya said, "My dear devotee Haridasa, the conditioned souls of Kali Yuga will greatly benefit from this elaborate explanation of the offenses against the holy name that you have so far given. You are indeed a great spiritual stalwart and Acharya. Srila Haridas Thakur is Namacharya, or the foremost spiritual authority on the subject of the holy name. He practiced everything he preached. He taught the jivas about the pure holy name, the shadowy name or namabhas, and the glories of the holy name. He also instructed how one should quit committing namaparad. He taught all of this by his own example. In other words, Srila Haridas Thakur taught by being an exemplar as to how to chant. Okay? Now, Lord Chaitanya continues, I very much relished your dissertation on the holy name. As an Acharya, you are exemplary. Acharyas have to be exemplary. They have to lead by example. Otherwise, it's not going to work, because people are not going to take us seriously if we do not do what we preach. In other words, whatever is being spoken, the Guru's objective is to be able to lead and be an example. Okay? As a preacher, you are profound, because he was able to share very complex ideas. He was able to share very complex truths in such a simple manner, which is suitable for the residents of Kali Yuga or the people of this generation. Even 500 years later, after his appearance, Srila Haridas Thakur's dialogue with Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is so relevant, and there are so many aspects of it which are still so very applicable, because they did not quite speak at the level of what is the time, place, and circumstances surrounding 500 years back of Bengal. They spoke tattva, and when they spoke tattva, tattva is timeless truth. So whatever is spoken 5,000 years back is relevant 500 years back. Whatever is spoken 500 years back is relevant today. Whatever is spoken as tattva, which is absolute truth, which is spoken on the basis of absolute consideration, is timeless and it is eternal. As a consequence, whatever Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and Haridas Thakur spoke is relevant today, which is pretty fascinating for us to see that we have such potent dialogue between the Supreme Person and the best chanter. The reason why we call him the best chanter, he is a Namacharya. He absorbed himself in the holy names to such an extent that Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu designated him as the Yuga Dharmacharya, which is a very, very big deal, because it is the entire Yuga. and he is actually propagating the Yuga Dharma. So Srila Haridas Thakur's dialogue with Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is timeless, and we are seeing for the past several weeks when we have had discussions on different chapters of Harinam Cintamani, how relevant it is for the current day. How relevant are these dialogues and the precepts that we have gathered from this dialogue to the present day, and how applicable it is and how practical these tips are. Okay, now let us listen further to Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. He said, I very much relished your dissertation on the holy name. As an acharya, you are exemplary. As a preacher, you are profound. You are always ornamented by the priceless gem of the Lord's holy name. That was his primary qualification. Ramananda Raya in Gaur Leela, in Gaur Leela, he was Ramananda Raya, one of the most confidential associates of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. In Krishna Leela, this is supposed to be Srimati Vishaka Saki. Actually Vishaka and Lalita are the primary companions of Srimati Radharani, and Vishaka is described to be more in Srimati Radharani's mood. She takes on to Radharani's mood to the extent to which, for those who worship the divine couple and their eternal associates, they don't distinguish between Vishaka and Srimati Radharani's mood. Their approach towards Krishna and their acceptance, they're all almost of the same mood. Okay, Lalita Saki is of a little different, but that is the role which is played by Swarup Damodar Goswami during Gaur Leela. Now this is Ramananda Raya and this is Vishaka Saki. So now Lord Chaitanya is saying, Ramananda Raya taught me, which is so exactly, Ramananda Raya taught me the esoteric science of divine mellows. This is Lord Chaitanya. He's saying that Ramananda Raya taught him the esoteric science of divine mellows. And now you have instructed me on the profound philosophy of the holy name. Okay, this is almost like a little trick where Lord Chaitanya, in his extraordinary mood of benevolence, he is Mahavadanyaya, he is most charitable, most munificent, and he is speaking about two of his very confidential associates. He's saying, Sri Ramananda Raya taught me the divine mellows, the esoteric nature of divine mellows, very confidential topics of the exchange between the divine couple. That was spoken by Sri Ramananda Raya, and that used to happen during the night, where it was not so much discussed in public view because it was very confidential, and as a consequence, most people were completely unqualified to participate in such a discussion. During the day, Sri Gadadhar Pandit used to speak on Srimad Bhagavatam, and that others used to hear. Okay? Now, Srila Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is saying that Ramananda Raya taught him the esoteric science, and he is saying, you have instructed me on the profound philosophy of the holy name. Kindly speak on the different kinds of offenses made in the execution of devotional service. We should not complicate this. Okay, we are not going to complicate it today. I'm not going to go into a list of different offenses which are being given here. There are 32 different offenses. I'm going to touch upon the importance and understanding that one needs to have when one approaches the deity. I'm also going to touch upon probably the root reasons which come up when we engage in deity service and we commit offenses. Let's hear Haridas Thakur. You are asking about a subject that is more familiar to a servitor devotee. My time is taken up in association with the holy name. I don't know what to say about all this, yet I cannot disregard your instructions. I will speak whatever you make me say. Okay? So, by definition, Seva Aparadha, which is the topic of today, is always related to deity worship, always. Okay? The temple is constructed for the deity. Okay? It's unimaginable to have a temple with an empty altar. The temple is constructed for the deity. So Seva Aparadha, when we use the word Seva, we are literally talking about worshipping and rather serving the deity in the temple. Now, the context of serving the deity in the temple, installed deities, is such that Krishna takes on two different moods. When he comes into our house as a home deity, Krishna takes on the mood of a guest. And as taking on the mood of a guest, he is also very, very magnanimous, because just as any guest would be, he doesn't make too many demands. Because I'm a guest, you see. So whatever you give me, I will accept, because you're the host. I have to be courteous. So if you give me dal chawal, I will accept. You give me 56 different dishes, I will accept. I will accept whatever you give me because I am your guest. That's his mood when he is at home. In the temple, Krishna treats the temple as his home. So he becomes the host. And as a consequence, whoever walks into the temple is a guest. And since he is the host, and since Krishna is the Supreme Lord, then his standard in the temple is extraordinarily high. You have to maintain standards as if it is Krishna's home. It is his home, not your house. If it is your house, you maintain standards which are adjustable. In other words, you cannot really stretch it too far. You have to follow basic rules of Vidhi, regulations. But Krishna is ready with maybe one arati. Okay? He is probably ready to accept one good, very, very good, well-prepared meal. Okay? He's a guest in your house. But when you start serving Krishna in the temple, then it is Krishna's own home. And as a consequence, the standard of worship in the temple is much, much higher. Okay? What is the context in which we should understand this? First of all, let's probably share a few things about deities. And then we will get into the context of temple worship. Okay? Seva Aparadha. Seva Aparadha can occur at home as well. Undoubtedly. Wherever the deity is, seva can be done. And that seva can be very profound, and it can have miraculous results in accelerating our ability to move forward. Okay, accelerating our ability to move forward in quite, accelerated pace. Just really putting us on the high gear in devotional service. What is to be understood now is that Krishna is non-different when he appears in the Archa Vigraha. Let's go back 500 years, and I want to share a little story. And it may be a story that you're all well-known story, but I just want to share it today just to bring context into our discussion. There was this great devotee of Lord Chaitanya whose name was Mukunda Kaviraj. And Srila Mukunda Kaviraj was, by his name, Kaviraj means physician. He was an Ayurvedic physician, and he was an exalted devotee, exalted in the sense that he was a very close associate of Lord Chaitanya. He was a physician to the local ruler. And his involvement or absorption in devotional service, his absorption in Krishna Leela was to such an extent, he was so transcendently situated that one day someone brought forth a peacock feather fan to serve the ruler, the king, whom he had been serving as a physician. So the moment Mukunda Kaviraj saw the peacock feather fan, it is said that he just simply fainted. You see? In other words, this is something where people react to it in the sense that if their absorption in Braja Bhakti is so high, an object which relates to Krishna simply puts them into a swoon. They become unconscious because their own consciousness departs and gets connected to the spiritual sky. You see? What happens when people in prema, what happens? They basically experience things which are far beyond the capacity of the human body to comprehend. So the body shuts down. Okay? So Mukunda Kaviraj simply shut down and he fainted. Now this Mukunda Kaviraj, Prabhu, had a deity by name Gopinath. And his son was very special. Okay? Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu used to ask Mukunda Kaviraj, are you Raghunandan's father or is he your father? Are you his father or is he your father? This was the kind of question which Chaitanya Mahaprabhu used to address Mukunda Kaviraj. Anyway, you will understand why. So they had this deity Gopinath, and this deity Gopinath was a home deity which was very, very nicely worshipped by Mukunda Kaviraj and his family. Raghunandan Thakur, he is an expansion of the Lord. He is amongst the Chaturvyuha of Vasudev, Sankarshan, Pradyumna, Aniruddha. He's Pradyumna himself, he's an expansion. So the son of Mukunda Kaviraj was Raghunandan Das Thakur, who was an expansion of Pradyumna, one of the Chaturvyuhas, an expansion of the Lord. So he had appeared as a son. And one day, Mukunda Kaviraj, he had to go to the town with his wife. So he instructed his son, Raghunandan, saying, okay, now it's your responsibility to take care of Gopinath because we will be coming back quite late. Ensure that you are able to feed him at appropriate time, and so on and so forth. So they prepared some wonderful dishes, laddus, whatever, and they left it with Raghunandan Das Thakur. And Raghunandan Das was a 10-year-old. He was much younger. He was a child. So Raghunandan Das, because of his purity and his potency, he had this understanding that if I'm supposed to feed, the deity is supposed to eat, right? Because if someone feeds me, I eat. So if I'm going to feed, he should eat. So he placed the plate of, dish, whatever it was, which they gave him. Let's assume that it was some wonderful Bengali preparation of sweets and sandesh or something like that. And he kept insisting that you should eat. He saw that the deity was not eating. So he kept insisting, why are you not eating? You should eat. And suddenly, because of the intense devotion of Raghunandan Das Thakur, his potency, the deity ate up whatever was offered. Then Srila Mukunda Kaviraj returns with his wife in the evening. And he asks him, saying, okay, did you serve Gopinath well? Yes, I served him well. And then said, okay, bring the prasad. You offered him bhoga, so bring the remnants so that we can all have some remnants. And Raghunandan Das answered, saying, there are no remnants. He ate up everything. This actually disturbed Mukunda Kaviraj and his wife a lot. And the reason is that they were very Pakka Brahmanas, and they felt quite distraught that they had raised a son who was actually lying. Yes, Archa Vigraha is very important, and worship is very important. We worship with devotion, but then we have never experienced the deity eating what we offer. The deity never eats the bhoga that we offer. Okay? So he felt that his son was actually lying, and this put him in great trauma because they were very serious people, they were very serious devotees. And this kind of behavior from their son, they felt very disappointed that they had even raised such a son. They said, this is so unfortunate. So finally, they gave another opportunity, and Mukunda Kaviraj Prabhu told Raghunandan Das Thakur that, okay, you offer again and let me see if Gopinath eats. At this time, Raghunandan Das Thakur offered, and Gopinath consumed half. He left behind some remnants. This put Mukunda Kaviraj Prabhu in such ecstasy that he had just hugged him and understood that this very, very deep devotion of his son was such that the deity reciprocated by accepting the bhoga. Krishna can eat. Okay, one assumption that we make is that Krishna eats everything that we put before him, which is not true. Krishna does not accept everything that we put before him. He does not. Krishna accepts if there is love, if there is preeti, if there is devotion. To the degree to which it is there, the particular bhoga is accepted, and we can taste the prasad, and we would know the potency of the prasad when Krishna is accepted as opposed to when Krishna is not accepted. You can distinguish that. It's very distinct. Okay? When we prepare with great shraddha, when the vegetables are prepared and everything else is prepared with shraddha, faith, devotion, okay, love, Krishna accepts. And this is observed even when we taste. So what to say of Raghunandan Das Thakur, who is an expansion of Krishna himself? He is an intimate associate of Krishna from Braja. He made his offering and he said, as a child, he's very simple. The child is very simple. He says, okay, if I'm going to be giving something to someone to eat, they better eat. So he made this offering and Gopinath could not refuse. The deity Gopinath consumed that. But Mukunda Kaviraj, being an adult, his thinking will not be as simple as a son's. Okay? The adult's thinking is complicated. The degree of faith that we have is far less than that of a child because a child does not apply its intelligence. The child thinks through the heart and accepts everything as they are. Okay? It's a great blessing. It's a great blessing to be able to accept things as they are from the Shastra and even when we deal with the deity. So when the father said, this is Gopinath, this is the Archavigraha of Krishna, he is a deity, you got to take care of him, make an offering, and then, make sure he eats, make an offering because he has to eat. The son insisted. In fact, the son was very distraught. Oh, Gopinath, you don't eat? Then what will my father say? As a consequence, Gopinath accepted. Okay? So Mukunda Kaviraj was thrilled. He was completely thrilled to see that extraordinary exchange which Krishna had with his son Raghunandan Das, and he realized his son was very special. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu used to ask Mukunda Kaviraj, are you Raghunandan Das Thakur's father, or is he your father? And Raghunandan Das Thakur's father, Mukunda Kaviraj, used to answer Chaitanya Mahaprabhu saying, Raghunandan Das is my father and his son. And the context in which this question was put before Mukunda Kaviraj by Mahaprabhu was that if someone is showing us the path of devotion and is actually guiding us, then such a person is superior, even if they are biologically inferior to us in terms of, biologically they are subordinate to us as being a son or younger brother and so on and so forth. So Mahaprabhu used to ask, is he your son or you are his son? And then Mukunda Kaviraj realized what that meant. And then he started answering, he is my father, I am his son. So this was Raghunandan Das Thakur. The reason why we related this was for us to understand that the degree of devotion that we have would bring forth reciprocation from the deity. Please understand that. The more we feel that deity worship, either at home or at the temple, is a burden, it will become a burden because Krishna would grant that wish. He would make it a burden. The more we reciprocate and we bring the deity to the center of the house and start living around the deity and engage in deity worship to the fullest extent, to that extent Krishna reciprocates and he takes over our life. Okay? He takes over our life. That is true with the temple deities as well. In the temple, the context is a little different. And why is it different? Because Krishna expects that we treat all his guests very nicely. That is the expectation, because that's his home. Since it is his home, he expects that whoever walks into this temple is my guest, and these people have to treat them very nicely. So as a consequence, the real reason for deity worship turning sour, the deities leave the project. Okay? There are many, many situations. There's been history in our movement where the deities have left. As much as we heard from the Chaitanya Charitamrita, the deity manifests fully and reciprocates, the opposite is also true. The deity leaves. And when the deity leaves, there are many inauspicious events that occur in the community. Many inauspicious events. Okay, sometimes there are fires in the temple, all kinds of things happen when the deity leaves. The deity departs. And as a consequence, the whole project just comes tumbling down. The community just becomes completely shattered. Okay? There are many, many things. If there's Aparadha, the deity would ensure that everything collapses. It will collapse. There's no doubt. Okay? There's no doubt. Because the deity, is Archa Vigraha, is non-different from Krishna. So when we go near the deity, we have to go with the expectation and the realization, as we shared in the previous session, of the 6 different types of surrender. The most important part being, Krishna, you are my only shelter, which is the Swarup Lakshana of Vaishnava. That is the Swarup Lakshana of a sadhu. So when we approach Krishna in the mood, you are my only shelter, then we remember that the other Vaishnavas are also looking at Krishna in a similar manner. They are coming there with their focus at his lotus feet. They want to completely surrender to his lotus feet. They are connected to him. As a consequence, when we ill-treat the guests of Krishna, that begins the Seva Aparadha. The sequence of Seva Aparadha will begin when we ill-treat those who enter into the temple who are in reality Krishna's guests. This is a big bit of a misnomer where we don't understand that that's not our property. So it's all about possessiveness. It is all about ownership. It is all about understanding that that is Krishna's property. Krishna is the master. It is his home, and we are servants, and we are approaching, and we are also guests in one sense, and he is viewing everybody who is walking in as a guest. Imagine violating the principle of a very important person's guest. How wonderful would that be? Would that not have consequences? In a similar manner, there would be consequences when the deity is offended. And the deity is offended not just because we offer him flowers with no fragrance, not just because we don't take proper care. Those are definitely offenses. And the reason why they are counted as offenses is obvious. It is because we simply don't care. Imagine Krishna and Braja. Imagine Krishna and Braja where we approach him with half-baked consciousness, where we have other objectives, where we approach him with completely different consciousness, where it is our show, not his show. It happens all the time with pujaris. Okay? I'm saying this because many, many devotees here are going to become pujaris in a temple. Many, many cases, the real issue with pujaris is that they make it their show. It is Krishna's show. It is not our show. He is there to receive his guests, and then we have to assist him in being able to receive his guests. We have to serve him, and we have to serve his guests. He is not there as an object for us to be able to lift up our consciousness in terms of, our false ego, so that we could receive praise. Pujaris, this is a great failing of pujaris, where they start using Krishna for their own purpose. Okay. Plus, the real danger with pujari service is that you're going to go in proximity of the Supreme Lord with all our desires, which are in reality problematic. If we really sit down and examine ourselves, we will find that most of us do not have real desires for pure bhakti. We don't. If we really have desires for pure bhakti, why would there be aparadha? We don't have proper desires, and then we approach great power. And when that combination comes together, those improper desires get granted. So many, many cases, pujari service ends out being either a great blessing or it becomes a problem. It is up to us to make it a great blessing. It is up to us to understand each and every rule. It is up to us to understand that the rules have context in making Krishna, very comfortable and being able to serve him in his house. The temple is his house. When he is in your house, treat him as a guest and ensure that if you're not going to treat him properly as a guest, he will leave. He's a guest. Just because he's going to drop the standard for treatment when he comes into our houses doesn't mean that he can take on any kind of treatment. Okay? Fundamentally, one thing has to be remembered. Ensure that we are able to treat Krishna as a person. That is the real issue which we face. Seva aparadha occurs. Nam aparadha occurs. Vaishnava aparadha occurs. All of these things occur because of impersonalism. We might believe and follow the personal philosophy of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. We might believe that the Supreme Personality of Godhead is a person, but yet we don't act in that manner, which means a faith in the fact that Krishna is a Supreme Person. He's a person with feelings. He's a person with, certain needs in terms of wanting to have loving exchanges. When we forget that, then we go completely off in our ability to be able to serve properly. So our objective is that it is his house. We serve him nicely. When he is in our house, he is the guest. And as a consequence, we do everything in our means for us to be able to make him comfortable. So the whole idea is keep our focus on Krishna. Okay? It should not be that Krishna is simply an instrument for us to kind of show that we have good decorative skills. Good instrument for us to show that, we have stitched, we are kind of being able to, kind of dress him up in one way or the other. It's astounding. In some temples, you'll have very beautiful deities, but there'll be such bad behavior from the pujaris that it is just astounding that the deities are even tolerating such people. It's astounding. It's amazing that you cannot really treat Vaishnavas who are the essence. Krishna practically lives for the Vaishnavas. He exists. We cannot really treat Vaishnavas improperly and then treat the Archavigraha nicely. That is Kanishta. What is the meaning of Kanishta? Kanishta is one who is not fixed, or she is not fixed. That is when we want to treat the deity nicely, but then we forget how to treat the Vaishnava properly. This is Kanishta Adhikari. He is Adhikari, no doubt about it. They have Adhikar. They have Adhikar to the extent to which they can pass on Krishna consciousness to others. They are called Adhikaris. Okay? They've gained the secret of being able to chant the holy names. They are engaging now in confidential worship. That's the reason why they're called Adhikari. This is Kanishta behavior when we start looking and treating the deity well, but then don't treat his guests well. Imagine how it is. Just imagine that Krishna is sitting there wanting to receive service as a deity, and then we ill-treat the guests. And he's saying, what kind of nonsense are you? That you ill-treat my guests? This is my home. The temple is my house. Okay? You better treat me and my guests on the same level. It is only when we make the differentiation between Vaishnavas and the deity, this is called the Kanishta behavior, because we have not truly understood the essence of Vaishnava. Vaishnava is one who has taken complete shelter of the Lord. That is the Swarup Lakshana. He has nobody else in his heart, he or she. And Krishna has nobody else in his heart. He exists to interact with them. He exists to taste the mellow of devotional service which the devotee has to offer. So the whole essence of deity worship and Seva Aparadha is because there is Nam Aparadha. That is the reason why Mahaprabhu is making Srila Haridas Thakur talk about Seva Aparadha. Seva Aparadha occurs because there is Nam Aparadha. Nam Aparadha starts with Vaishnava Aparadha. So this whole pattern of offenses start with Nam Aparadha. One who is chanting very nicely would never be able to offend the deity, because in our process, Srila Jiva Goswami is very clear that everything we do has to do with deity worship. If you're reading Srimad Bhagavatam, everything we do has to do with Nama, appreciating the holy names. If we read Srimad Bhagavatam, we are glorifying the holy names. If we are engaging in deity worship, we are engaging the deity worship by calling upon the names of Krishna. If we are engaging in chanting, quite obviously, we are chanting and glorifying the holy names. All forms of seva that we engage in is to glorify the holy names. Seva Aparadha in the temple occurs because there is Nam Aparadha. So the fix for Nam Aparadha has to be done first. The pujaris, whoever is wanting to go close to the deities, they have to ensure that they chant very nicely before they even approach the altar. That's the reason why the service becomes quite intense. First of all, they have to get up very early because they have to be there for Mangalarati. They have to cook the bhoga, so it has to be even before the actual opening of the altar. And even before that, the offering has to be made. And then even before that, they would have to be ready. And even before that, they would have had to have had a bath. And, in the sense that they would have had to have had a bath and be ready, and then they should have chanted their rounds. Because if you don't chant your rounds before you do your deity worship, the chances of aparadha, seva aparadha, are very high. They're practically 100% guaranteed. As a consequence, it is highly recommended that deity worship is done after proper chanting of the holy names. Deity worship is done after accounting for proper chanting of the holy names. Deity worship is also done accounting for the fact that Krishna in the temple is in his own house. He expects us to treat him, his guests, and everybody else very nicely. So let's start with Nama Aparadha. Let's fix Nama Aparadha properly. And then after fixing Nama Aparadha, we will notice that Seva Aparadha almost is non-existent. There is no Seva Aparadha for the residents of Vraja. They can never commit Seva Aparadha. There is no Seva Aparadha as we make advancement. It is only when we are filled with anarthas that we cannot chant properly, and as a consequence, there's Seva Aparadha. Chanting and Seva are connected. If one doesn't happen, the other will not happen as well. Okay? So I'm going to stop here, and I want to see if you have any questions. While you formulate your questions, I'm just going to do a quick recap. We touched upon the potency of deity worship. It's an extraordinarily potent way for us to make advancement if we have the opportunity to engage in deity worship, because now we are coming in touch with and engaging our limbs in the service of the Lord. It is also a very, very powerful way for us to engage, to actually engage in Nama Bhajan too. When we chant and engage in deity worship, it's very potent. It works out very well. Then we gave the example of Raghunandan Das Thakur. Raghunandan Das Thakur was a simple child who was a son of Mukunda Kaviraj, a very personal associate of Mahaprabhu. He was an eternal associate. Raghunandan Das Thakur is considered an expansion of the Lord. And he was able to make Gopinath. Even today, you can go and visit Gopinath in Bengal. When we go to the next Mayapur Parikrama, be sure to visit Gopinath. The place where Gopinath deity is the same place where Sri Narahari Sarkar Thakur's house is. It is the same place. So you can inquire. So there is Gaur Gopinath. Actually, there's one Gaur, just one Gauranga deity, and then there's Gopinath as well. So when you go there, you can visit. So we spoke about Raghunandan Das Thakur's exemplary mood, and as a consequence, we also saw how the Archa Vigraha responded. So we also realize that the Archa Vigraha is completely non-different. And then we also spoke about the fact that there are 32 different types of Seva Aparadha. We did not really elaborate or count it because I'm sure it has been shared by other people who have come to, who you have come in touch with for the purpose of learning deity worship and so on. But there are 32 different types of offenses listed in the Shastras for most part. And the biggest problem with Seva Aparadha is that it begins because of Nam Aparadha. If there is no Nam Aparadha, there will not be Seva Aparadha. So if our names, or rather the chanting of the holy names is fixed, then there's no question of committing Seva Aparadha. It's very important for us to understand that, because we have to be able to chant nicely for us to approach the deity, and then that would be a great advantage because we can take advantage of the potency of the holy names and serving the deities, and we'll be able to make a lot of advancement. Okay, I'm going to stop here and let me see if I can take any questions. After looking at all the numerous upacharas and temple worship, how can one avoid it turning into mere ritual as opposed to a very personal form of worship? The whole idea of vidhi, which is worship according to rules and regulations as given in the Pancharatrika Pradipa or in the Hari Bhakti Vilas and so on and so forth. The whole idea of all these rules and regulations is to bring forth our ability to relate to the deity in a proper way. In other words, this is training for us to be able to relate to the deity in the spiritual sky. It becomes spontaneous. It becomes spontaneous if one is able to spend time, understand why it's being done, and also being able to engage it. It becomes spontaneous. In other words, it is not as elaborate as one would think it is, or complex. Over a period of time, it becomes a part of one's nature. And how does it become a part of one's second nature? It becomes a part of one's second nature if their consciousness has become elevated. If consciousness stays at the same level, then the 16 upacharas are very cumbersome. If consciousness rises along with our engaging in 16 upacharas, the 1.5 hour worship, and I'm giving an example. I used to offer 16 upacharas to my deities at home, and it used to be done exactly as it is recommended in the Pancharatrika Pradipa. It used to be quite elaborate. I used to do it every day before going to work, and it used to take me a good 1.5 hours just to complete deity worship. 1.5 hours in the morning just for deity worship. And then I noticed that over a period of time, the 1.5 hours became quite condensed, and I used to be able to offer 16 upacharas within 40 minutes. It became condensed. Why was it able to condense? Why were we able to condense? We were able to condense because we saw that following the vidhi and following the rules and regulations given in the Pancharatrika Pradipa for the upacharas allowed our consciousness to eliminate the offensive nature and to rise up from the mode of passion and ignorance to the mode of goodness. Higher the consciousness, less offensive. Higher the consciousness, easier it is to do. Higher the consciousness, more effective it would be for us to be able to appreciate each and every item that is being offered. Because every item that is being offered is not ritual. Every item is a personal interaction with the Lord. In fact, our standard is to worship Sri Sri Radha Krishna as Lakshmi Narayana. We don't worship Sri Sri Radha Krishna in that mood. Our vidhi, which has been selected mostly from Pancharatrika Pradipa, or the Narada Pancharatra and Hari Bhakti Vilas, has come from the Ramanuja Parampara, where Sri Sri Lakshmi Narayana are being worshipped. They are worshipped quite opulently. So our vidhi has been very carefully selected by our acharyas, and they've been given to us. And the purpose is engage in it and appreciate what you're doing, each and every particular step. And if you appreciate each and every particular step, it will elevate consciousness, and eventually it would not be ritual. You would be able to experience the different items which are being experienced by the Lord. Okay, so this is similar pastime occurred with Sant Namdev and Vithoba. When Namdev Maharaj was a kid, he offered Bhoga and Vithoba ate. Not only after complaining of getting tired, Namdev and Mata Rukmini cooked as well. Yeah, there are many, many pastimes of this kind where the deity has interacted. There you have the deity in Orissa of Shakshi Gopal, who practically walked behind, to give, to stand witness because of the faith of the person. He practically walked because, Sakshi means he wanted to stand witness. He just walked behind. So the deity is non-different, okay? The deity is non-different. If we appreciate it, then you will have the ability to interact, and you would have the ability to make a tremendous amount of advancement if we have deep faith and dedication. We should take it very seriously. If you take this very seriously and chant before coming before the deities, then deity worship is a very, very powerful way to make advancement. If you do not chant, and if you're committing nam aparadha, very gross nam aparadha, where there's inattention, there's lackluster, there's no interest in chanting the holy names, it is guaranteed that there will be seva aparadha. It is guaranteed. We don't even need to think. Okay? Vrindavan Bhakti, they don't do the lengthy offering. So which is more important? The offering mechanical process or doing with pure love and devotion? As many times you don't understand the reason of the offering, like Chamar and Mayurpan. See, the answer is sadhana in our line is divided into two parts. First part is called Vidhi Sadhana, and the next part is called Raganuga Sadhana. Vidhi Sadhana is that which is designated or rather controlled by rules and regulations. And when you want to engage in deity worship based on Vidhi, it is most important. It is most important to engage in deity worship based on Vidhi, because until we reach the point of becoming qualified, what is the qualification? It is not the qualification of simply saying that I'm qualified or I've spent X number of years, and as a consequence I'm qualified. The qualification for engaging in Raga Nuga Bhakti is Raga, the attachment, and has to come naturally. It has to be spontaneous. And that spontaneous attachment and spontaneous engagement of devotional service happens when there is a higher level of Sambandha Gyan. As the Sambandha Gyan progresses from being from the understanding that I am a servant, from that particular level, you start understanding what type of servant. Are you a servant with Vatsalya Priti? Are you a servant with Sakya Priti? Are you a servant with, Madhurya Rasa? Are you a servant with Dasya Priti? When you start understanding what kind of a Das we are, because we have increased our Sambandha in relationship to Krishna by the mercy of Guru, and slowly, steadily we reach the point of understanding who we are in relationship to Krishna. And that particular understanding brings about spontaneity. What is a spontaneity? Raga. Raga Nuga Bhakti is spontaneity where, for example, a mother, does not have to follow Vidhi to feed her child. A mother looks at the child and says, "You're hungry, here, eat." A friend, Vishramba, he or she, he's not going to think of the Lord as being anyone else. He's going to say he's a friend. There's absolutely no concept of authority. So he treats the Lord as an equal. So in such a mood, he is going to say, "Oh Krishna, eat." And he might even eat from the same plate. This is Raganuga. The point which I'm trying to make here is the spontaneity which is supposed to comes with Sambandha Gyan. It's a matter of advancement. So it should not be done cheaply. The safest and the best way to do it is to follow Vidhi. Follow Vidhi, and it will turn into spontaneity, because the deity himself would reciprocate and give us information about how he wants us to serve him. Okay? There have been many, many, many situations of this transformation. So the safest is follow Vidhi. As much as it is elaborate, we may not understand. The reason for offering the Chamar. Chamar is, we are offering so that, we're treating him like a king. As I said, this worship of Vidhi is like Vaikuntha worship, it's required. In Vaikuntha, everything is rules and regulations. And then when we qualify ourselves and we become pure and our Sambandha Gyan increases, we then can worship him quite spontaneously. And that spontaneity requires adhikar. And that adhikar is not cheap. It is not something that should just come, okay, someone else is doing it, I can do it. It can become dangerous. Okay? Follow Vidhi. If you're doing 5 upacharas, do 5 upacharas with Vidhi. Find out the specific mantras associated with them. Find out the process, find out the sequence, find out the number of rotations. Do all of that. But even before you start any of this, ensure that the holy names are given first priority, and we have already chanted the holy names nicely so that we are able to approach the deity in the proper mood. Otherwise, it can become quite problematic. Okay, I've answered that. And then I think I've answered all the questions, so I'm going to stop here unless I have one more question or so. I'm just going to give 10 seconds. I'll wait for 10 seconds, after which we can conclude this session. Next session, which is on Thursday, is going to be the last session on Sri Harinam Cintamani. It's actually a very elaborate topic. They have shared many confidential truths, but we've got to see what I can share to the audience that we have. And after that, starting next week, I am planning to begin classes on Sri Madhurya Kadambini. Okay, that is the topic that I've chosen. We will be talking on Sri Madhurya Kadambini. So I don't think I have any more questions. I will end today's session. If there are any questions, feel free to write to us. You can write in the website as soon as I've loaded the video, or you can approach me through Facebook or email. Hare Krishna, Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai.